My dear friend, if you're lying awake in the middle of the night, tired but with your mind racing and racing, then perhaps this is the video just for you. Welcome to Best Senior Sleep, a place to rediscover peace and restore your health through truly deep sleep. Sleep after age 60 simply isn't as easy as it used to be. We find ourselves waking up in the middle of the night more often. It's harder to fall back asleep. Or perhaps we wake up in the morning feeling just as tired as when we went to bed. And that is not just something unique to you. I have heard this from hundreds and hundreds of older adults I've had the chance to meet and work with. The good news is, your sleep can be improved. Starting tonight, in today's video, I'm going to share with you 8 simple but incredibly effective things you can do right before you go to bed to help your body relax, let your mind unwind, and have a truly peaceful night. Also, I want to talk about the 3 main origins of the sleep problems I see so often in older adults. The reasons our sleep often gets worse as we get older are usually due to a couple of different factors, but they seem to fall into 3 main groups. 1 is our habits, 2 is the biology of our bodies, and 3 is some of the health conditions we may have. And don't forget, habits could be before we go to bed, during the day, or maybe even at night too. We just never know for sure. Let's start by talking about something that happens to most people as they get older. It's technically called phase advancement, but I like to call it Grandma wants dinner at 4:30. That's because their melatonin production has advanced, meaning it happens earlier than it used to. So their stomach starts rumbling because they think it's actually later than it is. This happens very, very frequently. In fact, it seems to happen in most people, and it's a natural thing that occurs. The signs and symptoms of this phase advancement are typically that people start waking up a little bit earlier, they can be more productive in the morning, and they start to feel very sleepy in the late afternoon, or might even be found napping on the sofa. Remember, this is because of a melatonin shift. As we get older, melatonin production physically slows down for many people once they're past 55. So, in that specific case, supplementing melatonin can make sense to help boost your production. I want to be clear here, not everyone needs to be on melatonin. You should talk to your doctor, see if you're having these symptoms. And if you are, then maybe start with a very low dose of melatonin, perhaps a 0.5 milligram, and try taking it about 90 minutes before you want to go to bed, and see if it helps. Because the reason you're wanting to eat earlier and go to bed earlier is your body's melatonin is actually turning on too early. So taking that pill a little bit later in the evening can kind of teach your body's system to do it later. This also represents those people who have taken my chrono quiz, what we call chrono longevity. For instance, if you used to be a bear, you may turn into a lion. Or if you were someone who was neither an early bird nor a night owl, you may become someone who is an early riser. Those are things that we see that occur. So just remember that as you get older, your chronobiology is going to shift, but understanding your chronobiology will help you know your most productive times of day and when to go to bed to get your best quality sleep. The Sleep.com website has a quiz to help you identify your chronotype. It is a wonderful tool that I designed to give you practical tips to help you get your best sleep and be your best self all throughout the day. Now, let's talk about some habits that we all tend to carry forward as we get older that unfortunately we haven't let go of yet. I have to mention the biggest one, don't I? And that's caffeine. One of the things that many people don't really think about, especially if you've been drinking caffeine for a long period of time, is it just doesn't have a big effect on you anymore. And so you keep taking it in, but just because you don't feel the effect doesn't mean it's not affecting your body. There have been several studies that reported that we are more sensitive to caffeine internally as we get older, and another study showed that adults over the age of 65 take 33% longer to metabolize caffeine. So you really need to reduce or stop taking it much earlier in the day. And many people, out of habit, like to order coffee with their meal. And if you're eating dinner at 5 o'clock or 4:30 and having a cup of coffee, not only is it taking 33% longer to get out of your body, but it is definitely going to affect your sleep. There's a technique called caffeine fading. To be honest with you, I was not a heavy coffee drinker at one point, but I could drink 3, maybe 4 cups a day. And so I decided to do this caffeine fading technique. You take the last cup of caffeine of the day and you make it half caffeinated, half decaf. You do that for a week. Then that last cup is completely decaf for a week. and you just kind of shift it forward. Every single week, you're eliminating half a cup of caffeinated coffee and adding in half a cup of decaf. You still get your coffee, you still get your ritual, you still get your taste, you still get your smell, but what you don't get is the problem with the caffeine later. Another big activity that many of us engage in as we get older is we just have more downtime. Or perhaps we're not stressed out as much. And guess what? We have what I call unscheduled naps. It's not because we want to, but it may just be because we're bored or we're just sitting around. But we are going to have a little natural body temperature increase from 1 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. When that happens, that's a signal for your brain to release just a tiny bit of melatonin. This is why people from 1 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon tend to feel sleepy. But if you're inactive, let's say you're an older adult, and you've finished your walk for the day, and it's 2 o'clock and you're sitting on the sofa watching television, you are very likely to fall asleep for a nap. What happens if you take a nap? Remember, there are two systems in the brain that control sleep. One is called sleep drive, and one is called sleep rhythm. If you take a short nap, you're actually going to affect both of these systems, and it's likely the sleep rhythm as well. So if at all possible, what you really want to do is avoid napping. From 1 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, your body is naturally going to feel sleepy. But if you can get outside and get some direct sunlight, that is actually going to turn off the melatonin spigot in your brain and make your afternoon much better. Let me tell you a quick story about a patient of mine, a 63-year-old gentleman. He was taking a nap after lunch routinely, but what was interesting is his naps were sometimes an hour, 2 hours long. So one of the things that we always wonder about when people are doing a lot of napping during the day is, are they getting good sleep at night? One of the things I asked him to do was an at-home sleep study, and guess what? He had mild sleep apnea that none of us really thought about or caught, because he didn't have a lot of the other symptoms other than daytime napping. And once we were able to identify that, we were able to treat his sleep apnea at night. He no longer needed to nap. He was much more active and able to do what he wanted to do. Next, we're going to move from habits to biology. What is it about biology that can affect your ability to sleep as we get older? One of the big things is there's a natural increase of EEG arousals as we get older. I mentioned this in a prior video, what I just talked about. But remember, sleep becomes fragmented as we get older. So we're basically going from awake to stage 1 to stage 2 to arousal, stage 1 to stage 2 to arousal. And we start missing some of that deep, restorative, refreshing sleep. What's called slow wave sleep actually tends to decrease. We also see that our percentage of stage 1 goes up. To be honest with you, stage 1 doesn't do a whole lot for you. Stage 3 and 4, or slow wave sleep, that is the physical restorative sleep that we're looking for. So one of the things we always want to do is be aware that naturally, our brain is not going to have as much power as it did when we were younger. So there are some things that we can do to kind of combat that. I also want you to know that the American Academy of Sleep Medicine found that these age-related changes are so common that we actually change how we score sleep studies based on your age. So if you are over the age of 55, like me here, then guess what? We're going to score your study a little bit differently because the biological changes are so common. Okay, so what do you do about it? The biggest thing to do, you can't change your biology, right? Is to limit the environmental effects that can make your awakenings worse. For instance, number 1, you don't need light in the room, so if at all possible, keep the lights as low as you can. Still have a nightlight if you need to get up to go to the bathroom. I don't want you falling down in complete darkness. If you can keep the room cool but not so cool that you have to wear a winter coat to bed, if you can block out as much noise as possible, that seems to work for most older patients. To be honest with you, as I get older, my hearing is not that good anymore, so noise doesn't seem to bother me as much. Another big thing that many people don't really think about is consider changing your mattress. I was really surprised to find out that many older people have been sleeping on their mattresses for a very long period of time. And here's the thing, as we get older, our physical bodies change much faster. So let's say you waited, 7, 8, 9 years before you bought a mattress when you were in your 20s. That's probably fine. But in your 50s, to be honest with you, you cannot wait that long. I don't know about you, but I wake up with a new pain or a new ache every month or so, and trying to minimize and understand that is going to be very important. If you haven't changed your mattress in about 6 to 7 years, perhaps it is a very good idea to consider that, because that can have a big effect on your ability to stay asleep. Remember, your biology is keeping you in lighter stages of sleep. If you have a bad mattress, it's just going to keep waking you up constantly. I always tell people, you want to find something that has a lot of cushion and good pressure relief. I personally also like my mattress for older adults to have good edge support, because I personally sit on the edge of my bed when I wake up in the morning to kind of get my breath back and get my bearings. I know many people my age do that as well, and we don't want people sliding off the bed. So do yourself a favor. You want something with edge support. You want something that is really comfortable, as well as getting some extra support in the middle. Another thing that interrupts our sleep as we get older is the prevalence of, yeah, you guessed it, medical problems. To be honest with you, some of the most common and interesting medical problems in the aging population are things like high blood pressure, almost 60%, diabetes, 27%, depression, 16%, dementia, 12%, obesity, which is now 42%. All of these medical problems have potential effects on your ability to sleep. Obesity, for instance, can lead to snoring and sleep apnea. That will put you in lighter stages of sleep. So when you think about medical problems, and I've listed quite a few, the goal here is to treat the medical problem first, because in many cases, that's the root cause. And the sleep disorder may be secondary and potentially go away even if you don't have one of those health disorders that I just discussed. If you, of course, could have an undiagnosed sleep disorder, that is absolutely possible. As we get older, we definitely see a lot of this occurring. Specifically, we see a lot of obstructive sleep apnea, which is caused by a narrowing of the airway in the throat. This often results in interruptions in breathing throughout the night. Snoring is a symptom of sleep apnea. But don't forget, sleep apnea can lead to gasping and choking in the middle of the night. Again, fragmenting your sleep, causing you to wake up in order to breathe. The best, biggest treatment out there right now is something called a CPAP machine. This is considered the gold standard primarily because they seem to work about 99% of the time. But sometimes they're not the most comfortable thing to use. Many people get used to it, but sometimes people will need an oral appliance, kind of like a mouthguard, in lieu of the CPAP. There are quite a few different things out there, so I don't want people to be discouraged and say, oh, I have to go for a sleep study. I know they're going to put a CPAP on me. I definitely don't want that. Don't be too worried. Let's figure out what's going on to cause you to have these sleep interruptions, and then we can figure out what might take care of them. Other sleep disorders that I often see in many of my older patients, which is the group I am rapidly entering, are restless leg syndrome and something called periodic limb movements of sleep. Restless leg syndrome is that strange, tingly feeling in your legs right when you lay down. And the only thing that makes it go away is if you get up and walk around. If you get up and walk around and it doesn't go away, it's probably peripheral neuropathy, and that's something you should talk to your neurologist about. But if it goes away when you stand up, it is likely restless leg syndrome. Now, the interesting thing about restless leg syndrome is it's typically a pre-sleep problem. When you're laying down and you're still awake, it occurs, but it can cause significant insomnia, and it can cause significant sleep interruption. It kind of has a cousin or a friend called periodic limb movements of sleep. Periodic limb movements is when your legs are jerking around like this all night long, or your arms are jerking, or something like that. You may not think that's a big deal, but it actually causes you to go from deeper stages of sleep to lighter stages of sleep. Again, as we get older, we are already in lighter stages of sleep, so we really don't need to be any lighter. So if your bed partner has noticed kicking the covers all night long or something like that, that's probably a sign that you might have periodic limb movements or restless leg syndrome. Unfortunately, there's no specific cure for restless leg syndrome and periodic limb movements, but assessing some underlying factors can actually help minimize some of the problems. We'll look at your current medications, check your iron levels, make sure you're getting adequate movement and exercise during the day, which as we get older can sometimes be difficult. Older adults tend to be on many medications for other medical problems, and those medications can include things like antidepressants, antihistamines, antipsychotics. All of these medications can make sleep worse, and many times doctors are too focused on one area, such as depression, without necessarily looking at sleep. I want to be clear, I'm not here to differentiate between depression and sleep, But what I can tell you is there are certain antidepressants that are very activating. I had one patient. We asked their doctor if we could switch the dose of the medication, one called Wellbutrin, from an evening dose to a morning dose. And as soon as we did that, lo and behold, they were able to get back to sleep. So it wasn't a matter of going off the medication. It was understanding the medications that you're on to see if they are making the quality of your sleep worse. And if they are, perhaps you change the timing of the medication. Perhaps you change the dose. Perhaps you change the type of medication. I want to make this super clear. You do not do this yourself. You do this with the permission of your doctor and under the care of your doctor. This is really important for people to understand because people should not be changing their doses or timing of medications without telling their prescribing doctor. Now I want to talk about insomnia because that's something I hear frequently from my patients. I recently read a study that said 50% of older adults report some symptoms of insomnia, such as difficulty falling asleep or difficulty staying asleep, daytime sleepiness, other factors like irritability, memory problems. Supplements like magnesium and melatonin have been shown to be somewhat helpful, but I want to be clear here. If you are feeling that you are suffering from insomnia, it probably makes a lot of sense to go see a sleep specialist like me, or perhaps a geriatrician, someone who works with people in that age range, because that certainly seems to help those people at night. Magnesium. A lot of people ask me the question about it. There was a study that showed magnesium did seem to help older adults who were magnesium deficient and had insomnia. So, if you think you fall in that category, perhaps it's worth a try. Melatonin can also be helpful, but again, dose and timing here are very, very important. Also, many people don't know this, but melatonin affects medications. Let me repeat that. Melatonin affects medications. It affects antidepressant medications, blood pressure medications. It even affects antipsychotic medications. So one of the things to remember is if you are going to start taking melatonin, talk to your doctor because they need to know and understand, because it can have a pretty big effect on other medications. As we've seen, there are very real biological factors that are going to change as we get older. But there are also some pretty complex medical issues that we all, as we get older, make our sleep complicated. So one thing you may not have thought about is your medication list. Many people don't even know that many migraine medications have caffeine in them. Even certain central nervous system medications like benzodiazepines, anti-seizure medications. Also, cardiac medications like beta blockers, and even respiratory medications like theophylline. All of these things can be so stimulating that they have a big effect on your sleep. So if you start a medication, or your doctor starts you on a medication, and all of a sudden you notice that your sleep is being interrupted, tell them. Call them up and say, "Hey, my sleep is really messed up. Is there something we can do about it?" 9 times out of 10, they've heard this before, and they have an idea or something that makes sense that hopefully you can minimize that situation. My older patients also find that they are taking a lot of supplements, over-the-counter sleep aids, and things like that. But I'm going to be very clear about something. There are a lot of older people who have said, "I was taking one of those PM medications. Tylenol PM, Advil PM, whatever PM. What's called PM is actually Benadryl. That's all it is. It's called diphenhydramine, and it's something called an anticholinergic medication. There is data now that shows, and this has been out for a long time, that daily use of these PM medications can absolutely lead to dementia. So this is not something to mess around with. If you are routinely using an over-the-counter sleep aid, I would encourage you to talk to your doctor and figure out, number 1, are you a candidate for cognitive behavioral therapy, which has been proven to be more effective than sleep aids? Or perhaps you need an actual prescription medication because your situation is temporary or time-limited. There are many different ways that you can approach this. So I don't want you to think, "Oh, it's just supplements or I have to take heavy medication." But you really want to talk to your prescribing doctor because many of these over-the-counter medications can be more dangerous than you think. While over-the-counter sleep aids are only effective for the short term, you can actually have longer-term success by taking vitamins and sometimes supplements. One I recommend for many of my older patients is vitamin D. There's a lot to consider before taking any supplements, so I would encourage you to watch the vitamin D video right here. We have that available for you, because I take vitamin D every single day. Taking it can not only potentially improve your sleep as you get older, but it has amazing daytime benefits as well. My dear friend, Good sleep is not some distant goal, and it doesn't require complex therapies or expensive sleeping pills. It starts with the very small things, like soft light, a deep breath, or a gentle routine before bed. If you've watched until the end of this video, I believe you are truly serious about your health and your peace of mind. And I want to emphasize one thing: your body still has the ability to heal. You just need to give it the right conditions. Try starting with just one habit tonight. Maybe it's a cup of herbal tea, some soft music, or writing down 3 things you're grateful for today. These small changes, when repeated each night, will become the bridge that leads you back to truly deep and restorative sleep. If you found this video helpful, please don't hesitate to leave a comment sharing what you will start doing tonight. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue receiving in-depth content that helps you live healthily and peacefully after age 60. Wishing you a truly peaceful night and a deep restorative sleep starting today.